Hi, yeah, my name is Vincent Florio, and I'm going to talk to you today about my journey from becoming primarily a WordPress developer over the past 10 years into having a project that came across our path that was kind of reflexively just going to be yet another WordPress project. But for me personally, over the past year, I've been exposed to a lot of the new Jamstack, headless CMS, that kind of stuff, and what put you in my headspace that led me to the reasoning to adopt Sanity as kind of a trial, and why we think it worked out well, like the reasoning process we went through and how validated we feel with that choice. The first thing I want to get out of the way, though, is I actually still really like WordPress. I think it's an incredible accomplishment. I think that it's had 20 years to be built up over time. The same people that are on the core development team are users themselves. So if there's bug fixes, feature requests, all that kind of stuff, it's generated by its own community. So there's a lot that goes into it. It's tended to. I also think my background is in art, in character animation, and so I'm not like a programmer. And so just like PHP, the language that WordPress is built in, I personally feel like it has a fairly low barrier to entry if you're trying to enter a development space. And there's certain characterization that I could do of WordPress that helps that, which is WordPress has a ton of wrapper functions. And I know there's a variety of levels of experience for people that might be watching this. So if you're not familiar, wrapper function is basically going to consolidate on low-level code to build a function that is like a go-to ready-made thing that you don't have to reinvent the wheel for the kind of tasks that you frequently would want to do yourself. WordPress is incredible at that. Also, if you're looking at some of the source of these wrapper functions, they themselves contain wrapper functions. And there's so many use cases that you think, well, can I do this and grab this by this piece, that kind of stuff, that it's very accommodating in that regard. But as nice as the theory is of WordPress, in practice, in modern years, it's kind of become a disruptive experience, and there's a couple major reasons for that in my professional experience. One of those is a lot of times if you're going into a WordPress site, the people have themes that I call off the shelf, which is there's this marketplace, and the marketplace is selling a theme that the people who made that theme so that you had something ready to go put all kinds of time and all kinds of money into making it. To recoup those costs, they want as many people as possible to think that their theme is a good idea. These marketplaces, it's not like, there are screens of quality to get in there. So it's not like it's bad code or anything like that. What you're going to get there is well constructed. But because they're trying to catch as many views as possible so that you only pay $40, $50, $60 for your instance, you might only need like 2 things out of there and get 20 other ones. So for you, it's like, all the things that all the other people like, that maybe they like those 2 and those 2 and those 2. It's noisy, it's confusing. I don't know what that noise was. It's sometimes less performant. Just the amount of bloat can be a problem. Also, I remember like 5 and 6 years ago when the page builder started to come out, how wonderful it was, because I can make a blog from scratch, going and looping through information, figuring out how pagination works. But I remember vividly the day where I was like, I'm just going to drop this in, and poof, a widget became a blog. That's amazing. Not only is it nicer for me to just build that, but everybody's going to be really excited that it's going to take me 15 minutes instead of a couple hours. But again, you have to realize that these sorts of plugins, as well made as they are, WordPress is extremely popular. I think still 30-40% of all sites. So there's seemingly infinitely variable hosting environments that it can find itself on. So there's going to be bugs that crop up. And so, how you talk about like, oh, well, that sounds really good in my head. It sounded good in my head, and when I tried to translate it, that's just like a life advice thing. With page builders, it's one of those things. If I'm constructing something, as easy it is to make the thing, if something gets in the way of me making it because there's a bug that crops up or something I don't understand because of hosting hijinks or bugginess from other plugins kind of interplaying, it's a bottleneck. I want to just get to keep the progress that I've made and not have stuff come up all the time. And the core editing experience in WordPress now is Gutenberg. And I would say that's a boon too, in the sense that just like you have the actual design being able to be templated out, that the individual, like inside a post or page, that experience can be crafted for a regular person who's not comfortable with HTML, who just says, well, how do I get two pictures side by side? That's way more accessible now. But with regard to what we're going to talk about in a second, it's still just a visual presentation. I'm making something in Gutenberg. It knows it's a heading, but the kind of intrinsic or inherent meaning of that content is still not there. So I'm going to give you a little tiny story that's going to inform where we go in a second. About a year ago, I was working with my friends. The company is called Future Friends, but they're actually my friends, in St. Augustine, Florida. And they had a client that was asking them to create a dashboard. They didn't want it to connect to anything, but I still had to make it like function, like, oh, click this, something explodes or whatever. And it was freeing. It was really freeing because I could just, it's mostly HTML and JavaScript, vanilla JavaScript at that. So if I did something, nothing fought me, nothing resisted. I just got to keep the work that I did. But being flat files, it's not templated in any way. I couldn't say, like, especially when it's a dashboard, you're reusing most of the stuff, like the interface and all that. So it kind of threw into sharper relief that I was feeling, if I wanted to replace something like WordPress in my heart of hearts, then it was going to need to be that easy to, just make it purpose built. But, I still needed what I had before, which is the templating. So I thought, I'm going to make my own CSS, which is a fool's errand if anybody tells you otherwise. But of course, they spent 20 years making WordPress. I wasn't going to replace it overnight. So my thought was, oh, I'll just do little tiny, like purpose-built ones. Someone only needs a couple features. It's only going to be able to do that. And my evil scheme was, if enough people want those couple features, I'll staple them all together. Then I'll have something a little bit more robust. But it still needs the ability to store something someplace. So I know that Supabase is very quality. It's a Postgres database that I could store stuff remotely there. And I am comfortable enough with JavaScript that I thought, oh, I was just learning about Next just in the past year. It hasn't even been a full year. But knowing that it's kind of like the front end and back ends, that was really attractive to me. But again, with respect to where we're going in a second, Supabase is a relational database, so you are forcing connections to happen, and so it's connected in that way. But the inherent meaning of the content, how it reflects and models the real world, is missing. So the actual project that I'm tending to talk to you about today was something that happened in January, but all that was just explained, like I said, in my headspace. The National Indian Health Board had a series of websites built in WordPress, and we thought about making them another one for their main site, because their main site, the crux of the main site is it acts as a hub for the other ones, but it's a lot older, and it's just PHP files. And they have, just to give you a quick example, if there's a piece of news, like a post, it needs to be repurposed in a couple different spots. So if you're using FTP to do that, you're literally going, okay, I wrote it out in HTML. I'm going to go to the other place it needs to be. Like, let's say it's about a law that got passed, and put this on the legislative alerts page. So the ask was relatively simple. They said, can you make us something where we only have to add it in one spot, and then everywhere we need to consume it, like a feed, we can just do it from there. And as I was kind of plotting it in my head, I thought about the REST API, and the REST API is kind of like what Sanity is doing with their API, in the sense that there are endpoints where you can kind of fetch information from the core software. But there's a laundry list of stuff that makes it untenable, at least for when we were trying it. So authentication, you have to authenticate to protect the information with the WordPress REST API. And the strongest thing is the community plugin, which there's nothing inherently wrong with it. It's just in our experience and practice, it was not something consistent and reliable, and we needed something that worked for us every time. When you make a request to the WordPress REST API, you get everything. So if you ask for a post, it's everything you ever possibly want to know about the post, even if it's something that doesn't have anything to do with the content, and then it's your responsibility to kind of pare that down. If you have a piece of information you're looking for that connects to it, like I need to know about this first to go get the other thing, you're making multiple passes, which is, I want to say disruptive, but it's more work. by default, you have a limit to how much you can fetch. Like we're used to, if you've used Sanity, just saying, hey, give me that, and as many as it takes, you get that back. Otherwise, you can define how much you want. And then there's also a strong enforcement of pagination with WordPress using the REST API. And we wanted a little bit more freedom than that. But perhaps the most disruptive, and this is another thing, like the theory versus practice, most of the hosting environments, they don't expect anything on the REST API to change that much, so they cache it for hours at a time. At the NAHB site, there is a lot of time-sensitive or urgent information. So if someone's like, oh, well, get that out the door, and you have to wait an hour for anybody to see it, that's a problem. So I think it's interesting that Surjit had mentioned it too. When I was looking at Jamstack alternatives or headless CMS alternatives, a lot of them were very developer focused. Things were very technical and hard to parse. And I couldn't imagine a regular person jumping in to some of them. And yet the split with Sanity that's wonderful is I know enough about development that if I'm doing development things, it allows me to do that with total freedom. It makes my life easier. The experience is a good one. But also what I've constructed with my experience is something that an editor doesn't know behind the scenes. Like, they can't see the scenes. They just get something that is straight to the point. If they ask for something and I make it using Sanity, in 10 minutes I can teach them how to use it because it's what they asked for and nothing else. No bloat, nothing like that. And also the API at Sanity, when you're consuming it, unlike the rest one in our experience, is self-flushing and self-caching. But perhaps the biggest win is structured content and how Sanity supports it. I didn't even know that was a thing up until this past year. I'm going to steal a quote from one of the guide pages on the Sanity website from Carrie Hain, who, as you can see, is head of content strategy relations, because it's such a good way to say it and it makes a lot of sense. The emphasis is mine. It says structured content is content broken into its smallest reasonable pieces, which are explicitly organized and classified to be understandable by computers and humans. And I think that last part is perhaps the most important. So how does it relate to the studio that we made for NAHB? Well, I have a couple document types that I want to walk you through quick that I think are strong examples of that. One is a position in the sense of like a job position or a position one holds. And the other is staff members, basically the people that are involved. And one of the things that I like that helps me to think about how structured content works, and especially with respect to Sanity, is kind of the remixing or recipes metaphor. I'll give you an example of that. If they have a contact page, I can go through each career department, which is itself a document type. And for those, I'll go in all the positions in my code to reference all those fields and look for the toggle where it's held or not, which I think is actually still in the screenshot back here. The position is open. And then for all of those that are held, in other words, they're toggled off because they're not open because someone's filling them, there is a staff member assigned. When you find that person, go grab their phone number and their email. And just as I've indicated too, if there's a lot of times like with the WordPress site, if you have contact information on a bunch of pages, that changes. You got to go find every other place that you put that. Whereas if it's all sourcing from one spot, like Insanity, and their contact information does change quite a bit, I just have to hit the one spot. And then again, everywhere that consumes that updates automatically, usually in seconds. As opposed to the career opportunities page, which is taking the same kinds of information, but just taking only what's contextually relevant. So in this case, we're just looking for the open positions that no one is in. And because they're not in them, we can give them the description to people that might be wanting to apply and the file storage that we're allowed here for the PDF for the application. So I wrote these down. I think it's really important when you're thinking about not only producing the content, but the how it's modeled out. You're giving everything that you want to possibly know about a subject, but it's just cherry picking. Like on a case-by-case basis, it is distinct from the presentation because you can make the presentation out of anything. And when you're doing querying for data in Sanity, it is literally just give me exactly what I asked for, nothing more, which is wonderful because I can mirror on the front end the queries that I'm doing. I can say, just give me these pieces, and my code basically looks like fill in on the blanks, like a Mad Lib. So when I think about how I try to validate my decisions, like I mentioned earlier, I think about working backwards in math to kind of check your answer. So I want to think out loud with you all about what this might have looked like if we did commit to it in WordPress. And presumably we're going to take the document types that we did in Sanity, and they would have had to be post types. But if I did custom fields beyond just, phone numbers, emails, that kind of stuff, when I go to, for example, associate a job position with a person, it's just going to be plain text. It has to be. There's no other way to connect to it. There are enough tools in WordPress where you can kind of hook in and see, okay, go find all the job positions, just so I have a drop-down list, so I don't have to retype or guess at what they are. But even there, it's literally just label. I could pattern match and say, using this information, go connect to that and give me some stuff. But then you're back to, okay, well, I'm getting all the things, and then I got to go and whittle it back down again. So in summary, I think we made the right decision. And for me, at least, moving forward, I think just like is apparent in the alphabet, S is always going to come before W. So thank you. That's it, I think. Is this sound? Hold on.
I'm muted. I'm sorry, that was me. Can you hear me now?
Sorry. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you.
Okay, I can hear you now. Sorry, I thought you were muted again.
I was muted. That's okay. I'm sorry.
No, you're good.
It's like I've never done this before. But yeah, great talk. Thank you so much. There's a lot of love in the Meetup channel if you want to go check that out. Sure. A lot of people are saying, flashback to my WordPress days. But yeah, the make my own CMS thought that you had, I've heard a lot of developers say that. Well, I'll just make my own CMS. It sounds like you're happy you did not make your own. Are you like?
Oh yeah, actually, historically, I've said a couple of times. I kind of repeat myself a lot in the Slack forums. Is Sanity, and this is me taking way too much credit because I'm not saying I could, is the thing that I would build if I could build things like that. Because it follows the way that my brain works, and it's deceptive how much it can do while still appearing like it's really simple. So you see something that is really straightforward, even though it does amazing things under the hood. It's comforting knowing that it can accommodate whatever it is that I happen to imagine.
That's really cool feedback. Thank you for saying that. So we have a question from Martin in the chat. Is there one or several specific features from working in WordPress that you miss in your current workflow? And could a feature be missing in Sanity or in the front ends you work with, or both?
Boy, that's an amazing question. Off the top of my head, honestly, no. I think this isn't a reflection on Martin. The internet has this tendency to compare one thing to the exclusion of the other. I like them both. It's just I get a little bit more with Sanity in a way that makes more sense to me. Just like people have like competing page builder ideas, it's like, hey man, whatever gets you happy and getting your work done, right? So no, I don't think that there's anything I particularly miss about WordPress, but not because it's horrible. It's just because I get the same exact stuff here and then extra stuff.
Yeah, right on. Well, thank you. There weren't very many other questions. I guess I'll ask this question, but has any tool solved the problem of non-developers adding content to websites, but still giving a flexibility to them, but they should never pollute the HTML?
That's actually a really interesting point. I was just thinking to myself, I happened to be thinking to myself this week as people were talking. I think it was you actually that posted something in the Slack forums about, hey, like, what is it that won you over? And
Oh,
the I seen a couple of responses, I think myself included, I don't remember my own life, about the schema setup and like just putting fields into existence like that. Because one of the things that's nice is it's so hard for a regular person to touch your stuff as the developer, whereas there's a lot of pathways and opportunities in WordPress for them to do so innocuously, but still disruptive. And so everybody gets their own kind of special fields to play in a separate space without anybody feeling like they're missing out on anything. So I think it's that was kind of abstracting those two worlds is actually very helpful.
yeah, right on. Well, thank you so much for your talk, and it's a lot. It's fun to like see the process that someone goes through when they're switching from WordPress, because it's something that you hear a lot of. So thank you for sharing your experience and things that you learned along the way, and yeah, and that you still love WordPress, and you're like, it's still like a great thing to use. But yeah,
Yeah.
great information. If you want to ask Vincent more questions, or if you just want to say hi, you can find Vincent in the Slack community. Everyone's tagging you, so you can definitely find him there. But yeah, thank you so much, Vincent.
All right. Thank you.